Well, hello everyone. I am Mark Gutzler, your host, and this is Gutzler Man. And today we are going to be talking about violence. So, before we dive in, let's define what violence is. So let's get someone else's perspective on it. So, okay, Google, what is the definition of violence?
Violence is used as a noun to mean behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something, similarly to brutality and brute force. Do you want to hear how violence is spelled?
No, thank you. I think we all know how violence is spelled. Anyway, before we dive in here, first I want to welcome you to Gutzler Man, and I want to thank you so very much for supporting my channel and the support that I've been given. And I don't want to take any of this for granted, so thank you very much. And today, let's dive right into violence. So why do I want to talk about violence today? It's because it is everywhere that we look at. We can't turn on the news. We can't go out in public. You know, we hear people talking about violence. We hear the news talking about violence. And it just seems to be an everyday thing now. We just can't get away from it. And not that we didn't have it before, but I think it's more talked about now. And so I want to define it a little bit, talk about it. What does the Bible say about it? And so let's jump right into this, shall we? All right. So the first verse I would like to read is from Romans 14 verse 1. Romans 14 verse 1 states, "Except the one whose faith is weak, without quarreling over disputable matters." That's what it says. Now, I wasn't planning on reading past this one. Like, this verse was all I was going to read from this Romans, but I think that I want to read on because this gives a good example of what this is talking about. And just see how we can apply it to our everyday life of today. All right, so here it goes. This is verse 2. This is Romans 14, verse 2. "One person's faith allows them to eat anything, but another, whose faith is weak, eats only vegetables. The one who eats everything must not treat with contempt the one who does not. And the one who does not eat everything must not judge the one who does, for God has accepted them." Wow, that was a lot to read. But I think that what we get in this, I believe what we get into this, when we break it down, is that the one that eats vegetables and the one that eats everything should not quarrel over that, because the Lord has accepted them both. Now, I'm not going to get into detail of how we can apply this to everything that's happening today, but I believe you might get the big picture on this. So let's move on to another verse, and that would be Titus 3 verses 1 and 2. Titus 3 verses 1 and 2. All right, here we go. I'll let you guys get there so I can get there. All right, so Titus 3 verses 1 and 2 has a little bit to do with Romans 14. It's relation, because it says on Titus 3 verse 1, "Remind the people to be subject to rules and authorities, to be obedient, to be ready to do whatever is good, to slander no one, to be peaceful and considerate, and always be gentle towards everyone." That kind of relates to what we read in Romans, because it is saying be respectful to the rules that we have to follow. There is always going to be someone above us, right? No matter what position we hold at our job, there's always someone above us. Even when you're the owner of a company, you have the board, right? Unless you're a small business, but there's still the customers that kind of tell you what you can and can't do. Basically, I mean, I don't really want to get into all that, but you know what I mean. But you can ask me questions below if you want about that. But this just says, to be ready to do whatever is good, to slander no one, to be peaceful and considerate, and always be gentle toward everyone. I mean, I really don't have to get into that. That kind of speaks for itself. Another verse that goes with this, I wanted Romans 14:1 to be the first verse we go over, but I wanted Titus 3 verse 1 and 2 to be like a verse under Romans, and also another verse under Romans. Along with that would be Matthew 7 verse 1 and 2. So let's go to Matthew 7. Alright, Matthew 7 verse 1 and 2. 1 and 2. And if you don't have a Bible, that's okay, because I'm putting it up here and you can read it. So here it goes. Matthew 7 verse 1. Now pay attention to this one, because they're all important, but okay. Do not judge, or you will be judged. Verse 2. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So, breaking that down, just don't judge anybody else, right? Or you too will be judged. And how? For in the same way that you judge others, the same way, if you're a judgeful person, the same way that you judge others, and what measures you use to judge others, well, that same measure will be used to judge you. And I'm just reading the Bible. I'm reading Matthew 7 verses 1 and 2. I have it up here for you to read, but please use like I always say, don't take my word for it. Look it up yourself, right? That way you might get something out of it that I didn't explain, something different than me, and also you know that I'm not just saying all of this. So that those two, the Titus and the Matthew verses, kind of go under the Romans, I think, to kind of go together. Now, the second big verse that I would like to read on this violence is Mark 7, verses 20 through 23. So we're gonna go to Mark 7. So let's go to Mark 7, and we're going to read verses 20, 21, 22, and 23. And here we go with 20. He went on, talking about Jesus. Now this is what Jesus said. If you have the type of Bible that I'm looking at, then he went on is regular black lettering, but the rest of this is in red lettering, meaning that everything I'm about to read is what Jesus spoke. And here's what he said. He said, what comes out of a person is what defiles them. For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come from. Sexual immorality, theft, murder. Verse 22, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lawlessness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. Verse 23, all these evils come from inside and defile a person. That's a lot. So I'm going to read it slowly. I'm going to read it back again, and I'm going to read it slowly, starting with verse 20 again. He went on. What comes out of a person is what defiles them. For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come. Sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lawlessness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All of these evils come from within, side, and defile a person. And it's just like, when I read that, I mean, you can't really define it more better than that. Like that, those are the words that come from Jesus himself. Like, wow, that's just, I mean, that's self-explanatory. All those things comes from within. That, using lust. Where's it at here? Deceit, envy, slander, arrogance, sexual immorality. Lust. You look at a woman first with your eyes, you see her, and then if you start looking at her the wrong way, then it goes to your heart, and then from there it just takes hold of you. Also, theft, murder, right? You start like theft. Murder can also come from that. Here it is again, adultery. That goes back to the sexual immorality. Greed, malice, deceit, lawlessness, envy, slander, arrogance, folly, like all that is just, once it starts, it's a snowball effect. It rolls down the hill. And, you can just look at the news today. You can just look outside today and just see what all that stuff really, really causes whenever it takes effect. And it destroys, it not only does it destroy a person, but it destroys a marriage, it destroys a friendship, it destroys, your relationship at work. You might even lose your job and become unemployed, and it just, like, all that stuff. And if you don't believe me, do research. Like, there has been people in the past that have let all this stuff get to them, and they're, on the verge of becoming homeless, without friends and family, job. It's not a good situation. So please take heed on these things. Do your research, do your homework. Please take everything that I'm saying and take it by heart, and do research yourself. Look at it, study it with your own eyes, and then, just believe its word. Because violence is a big thing, a very big thing. And the last verse that I would like to read out of violence is 1 Peter 3, verses 8 and 9. So we're going to go to 1 Peter. So let's go to 1 Peter 3, verses 8 and 9. And here's what this says, verses 8 and 9. Finally, all of you, be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. Verse 9. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing. Wow. I do have to stop for a minute every time I read that. I mean, it's just, wow. And reading on, I believe that in one of my videos in the past, I brought up 1 Peter 3, verses 12. And I wanted to read that because I believe that kind of ties into what I just read. And I'll read 1 Peter 3, verses 8 and 9 again, and then I'll go down and read 12. I'll skip down and read 12. It says, finally, all of you, be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing. Wow. And now we're going to jump down to 12. For the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. That does send chills. I'm not just playing, because, okay, the very last verse there, the very last sentence there, but the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't want the face of the Lord to be against me when he's mad at me. Because that, I mean, I'm speaking the truth here. Like, I just don't want that. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their prayers. That means that he hears you when you pray. You know, you're righteous. You pray for righteous things. He hears you. I believe I've said this in past videos. Don't ever think that your prayers go unanswered. If they're not being answered, that can mean many different things. Not just the fact that he's not hearing you. It could mean that the timing's not right for you to get an answer yet. Or maybe, you haven't got an answer yet because you haven't asked it the right way. Like, your heart's not in the right place. Like, there's just so many things, a few different things that can be standing between you and getting an answer. Maybe he is answering you, but you're not hearing it because you're more focused on hearing something, like you want him, you expect to hear something, one thing, and he's answering you another way, and that's, you're not hearing it because he's not answering the way that you want him to answer to you. I mean, there's different reasons. But wow, that is awesome. And all this kind of ties into the violence, on especially what I read earlier with Romans 14 verses 1 about about don't judge someone because they're different than you, and to listen to the rules of those that are above you, and abide by the rules of those that are above you. And I'm not saying by all means, if someone above you is telling you to do something that is against something that you know is right, then you can speak out against it. You do have a voice and you can speak out against it. But simple rules every day: driving the speed limit. When you drive the speed limit, when you walk into a restaurant, you can't really light a cigarette. You have to go outside. Like, different rules like that are put in place, and those are very frivolous rules, right? But they're rules nonetheless, and they're put into place so that everyone can have an enjoyable time. And it's just I can't really go much more into that, otherwise I don't want to get too political with this. This is not a political channel. This is a channel of speaking God's word and bringing you home healthy, family oriented videos, like going on vacation, or doing videos like this where I bring you the word. But stuff like this, violence can be avoided if we just listen to what God is trying to tell us from these verses. Romans 14 verse 1, Titus 3 verses 1 and 2, Matthew 7 verses 1 and 2, Mark 7 verses 20 through 23, 1 Peter 3 verses 8 and 9. There's more verses in the Bible than just those. Please understand that. But these are the ones that I pulled out to kind of give you a quick overview of these certain things that we just need to listen to what God is telling us and how to live a righteous life away from violence, away from hating one another. What we instead of hating, we can respect one another. Instead of fighting with one another, we can help each other grow and advance in lifehood, not just our careers, but just in our life in general. Hey, do you need help with that? Yes. Can you help me with this? Yes. It's love your neighbor as you love yourself. Love your neighbor, cut their grass, clean their gutters, help them go get groceries. Pray for them. You can be a prayer warrior. It doesn't always have to come down to money, but money, physical work, labor, like I said, cleaning out the gutters, cutting the grass, helping just someone across the street that has trouble walking, stuff like that. It's just something that you can do in turn of trying to hate one another and trying to get the last word on an argument and everything. I know sometimes it's easier said than done. Believe me, I live in this world too, and I'm human. It's easier said than done, but just go to prayer. You feel your heart being filled with anger, go to prayer. Pray to God. Pray to God. Keep praying. Take one of these verses. Maybe the Titus verse. Maybe the Romans 14 verse 1 verse. Just learn a verse. 1 Corinthians 13:13 says, and it's one of my favorite verses in there, there are three things in life that will endure: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Everywhere you go, every verse you hear, it all ties back to love one another. Love one another. It's getting rough out there. And unless we start making a change and loving one another, it's not going to get any better. We can't rely on the next person to do it. We have to be the one that brings forth the love. And that's what I want to do. That's why I share these videos with you. It's been awesome. It's been great. I love it every time that I get on here. I love reading the Bible. I've said this before. I love reading the Bible. I love reading the Word. I love sharing it with you. Maybe there's someone out there that needs to hear this, because there's lots of times that I go on social media and I come across something that helps me out sometimes, like it's just an innocent video that I'm putting up, but there might be someone out there, one of you, that really need to hear it. And I still feel like I'm prompted to keep doing this, and I want to. I love doing it. But that's been the verses. Please be, love one another, love God, and thank you so much. If you haven't already, hit that like button and hit subscribe and the bell so you can get content from this. You can hear future content. You can also get notifications when I put up future content, and just check out everything that I have in the past, places I've visited, other times that I've put up video verses. If there's anything that you would like me to do, please feel free to comment below, and I'll put together a video on that. Well, next time I'm Mark Gutzler. This has been Gutzler Man, and love God, love one another, and see ya. Well, hello everybody. I'm Gutzler Man, and thank you for joining me today. This is a very special episode. This happens to be a Halloween episode. We'll talk about that. Yes, they see evil spirits, but they also think that they see loved ones who have died and came back. And the